Hi, welcome to Seaside Quilting Tutorials. My name is Terry, and today we're going to be making a Bali Bowl. We're going to be using the Auntie's 2 pattern, AT101. You can acquire the pattern from Seaside Quilting Supplies. They have several in stock, along with many beautiful fabrics to use, from batiks to all kinds of quilt shop quality fabrics that are just beautiful for this project. Okay, let's get started. Now you'll need your clothesline in the size, depending on which bowl you decide, size bowl that you decide to make. I'm going to be making the basic bowl in this pattern. You'll want to cut all of your strips out ahead of time. I've taken each, and you'll connect your strips from end to end, however you want them to be coordinated. So if you're using different colors in your bowl, like say a black bottom and the middle, say pink, and so forth, you'll want to connect your strips according to how you want them to go on your bowl. I've connected mine with a 1/2 inch seam, just end to end, and then I've gone ahead and I have folded my fabric in half, wrong side to wrong side, and I've pressed it all the way through all of my strips. And so I don't forget, if you're using other than batik, you'll want to go ahead and cut off your selvage off each end before you connect them. And I have a handy basket over to the side of my chair, so that I could put all the length of my strips over in there out of the way. Just makes it a little bit easier as I go to have them not be on the floor and have them in a basket. So to get this started, just need to find the end of my rope. There we go. So to get this started, you're just going to fold this down at the top about a 1/2 inch. And you're going to fold your right side of your fabric over to that center line where you pressed. And then you're going to fold your left side over to that center line where you pressed. So it will be like this. Now, some find that it's easier to go ahead and press it like this all the way through all of their strips, because you'll be laying your rope into the center, and then you'll be folding the right side over and then the left side over on your rope. I found it was just as easy for me to do it this way, so I didn't bother with that. Now you're going to lay your rope to start with below where the bottom of that fold piece is. So where you folded it over a 1/2 inch, I'm just going to start my rope into the center below where that fold is, like so. So it's about a 1/2 inch down from the very top. Okay. Now for your first one of doing this, I do recommend to use like a batik fabric, or a fabric that isn't too slippery. When you use a fabric that is a little more slippery, you will get a little bit more puckers until you get used to adjusting your fabric on your rope. So what we're going to do is we have our rope sitting in there. We have it folded. We're going to fold the left side over the rope and then nice and tight over it. And then you're going to take your right side that's already folded into the center over that, like so. So it's going to look like this here. And then we're going to take a clip or a pin, whichever works for you, and we're just going to put that there so it holds it together. And you're going to want to set this under your machine, under your foot in a little ways, making sure that it's underneath the needle. You don't want it too much this way. You want to make sure that your needle is going to go down into that fabric. And as you go, you'll fold your right side in, you'll fold your left side in, and lay your rope in there, and then fold your right side over your rope nice and tight, and then your left side over your rope nice and tight. And you're going to be holding that with your fingers. So if you don't have your machine set into a table like I do, it's nice if you have one of those plastic extension tables that goes around your machine, so you have a place to be able to lay your hands down. It just makes it a lot easier. You can do it without it, but this just makes it a lot easier, so you have a place to press down and hold that. Now that I have my needle in, I can take that clip off. And it does take a little bit to get it started. Also, I have my stitch length set at 3.0 for a longer stitch. It just makes it a little quicker going through. And you want to use a coordinating thread to go with your fabric. Okay, and I've turned my machine down to a lower speed. If you have that ability, it really helps. If not, just go slow while you're sewing. And we're just going to get this started in there. And I'm going to use my awl to help guide that through so I'm not getting my fingers too close. And I'm just going slow to get it started in there. There we go. Now we have it poking out the back. So as we go, once again, we're just folding our, so if you have your center where you ironed it in half, you're going to fold your right side in, set your rope in there, fold your left side over, and then you'll fold it over your rope. Nice and tight, the right side first, then the left side over, like so. And this will flatten out your rope some as you're sewing across it. And I hold it in the back, but I don't tug on it. I don't want to pull. I'm just holding it so it stays straight underneath the center of my needle. Okay, so you just fold it in like you did before. Fold your right side over your rope, then fold your left side over that. Just straighten it out. You might have to hold with your fingers up here, but be careful if you do that you're not getting your fingers while you're sewing up close to your needle. And if you have to, I've got a little awl here that I can hold that down while I'm getting it started sewing. And you can hold it from the back, whichever works for you better. You just don't want to get your fingers in there. And you're just going to continue to do this as you go along, folding your fabric over and adjusting it so you have it folded. And you'll have sort of a seam over on this side where the two fabrics come together. So it's completely wrapped around your rope. I'm just going to take this out of here in a second and show you something. Now as you're sewing, let me see, you will get some little puckers in here every once in a while. It's pretty much inevitable as you're going along. Don't over worry about it. I just kind of, after I'm all done, I'll kind of go through and I'll finger press my fabric, and it will take some of the puckers out, not all of them. It's a little bit harder with the slipperier fabric to keep it all straight and not get the puckers. You will get them in there. It's okay. When we put it together, you're going to be doing a zigzag, and it covers a lot of that up. I did find that I like doing it better with the fabric that's not as slippery. And like I said, afterward I just go and finger press it. And then I can't even really tell in this one that I got some puckers. Okay, so I'll put this back under here. And you will get some. So, par for the course. So, once again, you're folding your right side in and your left side in as you go, and you'll fold your right side over your rope, and then your left side over your right side, and just get that straightened out before you go to sew some more. Oh, my cat's gonna sneak underneath. She thinks she's my helper. Yeah, she thinks she's going to be my helper holding the other end. Now you'll continue to do this all the way until you get to the very end of all your strips, adding your rope in as you go, folding it over, and continuing to sew. And just flatten that out as you go. Getting it nice and smooth. And you just continue going until you've gotten through all of it. And once that's all done, we'll start putting it together for a bowl. Okay, so now we have our strip all together. So what you're going to do is we're keeping this part that has your seam, that has kind of like an opening over on one side where your two pieces came together. That's going to stay to the inside of your bowl. And we're going to start with the bottom. So you're just going to take it and you're going to curl it like so, sort of like, try to get this into the camera properly. So we're just going to fold it over like that. takes a little bit getting it started here. And you're going to put that up under your foot, folded together at the end, and let your needle come down, and we're going to sew. And we're in a zigzag now. I should have told you that we switched over to a zigzag. I'm sorry. So we're doing a zigzag, and we're going to let this zigzag back and forth. I'm not sure why it went backwards there on me. There we go. And make sure that you don't get your fingers under there, because you don't want to clip your finger when it grabs your fabric. So once it's coming forward, I'm going to go back just a little bit. Instead of doing a double stitch, that's what's going wrong. I knew something was going on with this one. And 9's going to be too big for my zigzag. Let's see. That will be better. Okay, let's see. Wrong one. There we go. I'm going to bring that down to a 6.0 stitch. That'll be a good size. It didn't hurt to do the double zigzag there because it will hold it together better. And now we're going to go forward just a little bit. I gotta adjust my stitch here. Okay. And you just want to make sure that your zigzag is catching both sides. Now I have it in length going a 6.0, and in a width I have it at 5.0. And you just want to make sure that you're being able to catch both sides real well. And when you have your needle down, and your foot's raised up a little bit, we're going to work on curling this over as we go. Like I said, this beginning part is a little difficult at times to get started, but just, I hold my finger to the back here and I'm curling this around like so. And you can even kind of hold that in place with your awl. I'm just going to twist it back around. I'm pushing it so it comes back around for me, so it kind of goes to, you can kind of see that it's, get that thread out of the way, how I'm just taking my awl and I'm pushing it so it's going to the side. Let me see if I can hold this to the back, because I want to make sure you're being able to see how this starts. And I'm just going to coil this around. And so remember, your side that is all flush is on the outside. The part that's more like a seam and has that opening is going to the inside. And we're just going to wrap that around like so. And I'm just making sure that it's nice and flat. I have my foot off of my pedal so I'm not accidentally hitting my pedal while I'm messing around with this and getting it the way that I want it. And so what I'm going to be doing is, let me get this around so I can hold it. We're going to be sewing in a circle around this, right? Trying to get these two pieces together. I should trim this thread out of my way because it's bugging me. And it's going to drive me crazy hooked up like that. Alright, get that out of my way. Okay. So now that I have it curled some, I'm going to sew going in a circle around until I get to a point where I can twist it around again. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to hold that with my awl. Oh, and I unflipped it. It's okay. I'll just curl it around again. And you just want to make sure, let me see if I can get this back around so that you can see. That center line on my foot, I want to be centered between the two pieces so that as I zigzag, it's going to be catching both of my pieces. I'm going to hold that with my awl, and I'm going to kind of press up against it on this side and go ahead and start stitching. And then I cut my thread the wrong way. Okay. Not a problem. Just so that you can see how I got that started. I've got that zigzag in there and it's holding it, whoops, in a curl. I'm just going to rethread my machine real quick. I was trying to get that thread that was sticking up out of my way and I cut the wrong thread. Okay, so I'm going to stick this back under there. And I'll get that started again. I'm going to do my backward stitch again just to go back over there and make sure that I got my stitching in there nice and solid. And then go back forward. And like I said, you're going to be curling this around like so. And we're going to be stitching around in a circle. And you just want to go slow doing this, making sure that you're curling as you go, and that when you zigzag, that you're getting both sides. Your flush part is on the outside. Your opening piece here is on the inside. And we just want to be catching both sides of that with our zigzag. And we just have to keep curling. It's kind of a slow process. You just have to stop, adjust your piece so that you're being able to go in a circle. I'm just going to flatten that a little bit as I'm going around. Now that I've got some of that sewn, I'm going to flatten this just a little bit. this beginning part is just a little more difficult to start out. I'm going to kind of hold that together with my awl here. And I can press up against it on the back side and just hold this and let it keep going around in a circle. And there's a little bit of a stop and start getting this going. And you just keep turning. You're going to have to stop and turn and flatten it as you're going around. I'm going to turn my machine down just a little bit more so it goes a little slower for me. So the part where you stitched is actually going to be kind of up, where you had stitched across down the middle. You're going to see that sticking up to the top. Let's see if I can get my, let me raise this up just a little bit. I want to make sure that you'll see. Okay, let's see if that works a little bit better. I know my fingers tend to get in the way, especially when I have to work up close and concentrate on my fingers as I go. I do not want a needle in my fingers. That would not be good. So you just want that tight together, but also somewhat flat. Let me see if you're being able to, yeah, I think my fingers are too much in the way. Let me readjust this camera a little bit better. I'm just wanting to make sure that you're going to be able to see as I'm going around what's going on. Once I get away from it a little bit more, it won't be as bad. It's just in the beginning you're needing to twirl that around, and you just want to stop every so often and make sure that you're keeping your piece flat and that you're catching that zigzag in the opening. Let me see. Okay, and you can see as we're going around, we've got the zigzag, it's catching both sides. Get this flattened out up next to it here. Trying to see if I can get you a little bit of a better view. You just have to keep adjusting and turning it. And if you see it loosen up like it just did, just stop, readjust your piece, like I said, the whole start of it is a little difficult because you're kind of tight for room in the beginning. And you just kind of keep turning your piece, going slow, making sure that you're getting both sides so the zigzag is closing up that side. And if you see it getting away from it, just push it over, flatten your piece back out. Give myself a little more rope here. You just have to keep turning it as you go. Oh, the terror is back. She thinks she's going to be helpful. Most likely she is not going to be helpful. Okay, we have to get the kitty out of the way. I can't have her over here while I'm sewing. She'll be distracting me for sure. Okay, I think she might. No, I think the camera's fine there. Get this piece going back around. It's just a matter of balancing your pieces. And it does take some getting used to. Curling this as you go. As it starts to get a little bit bigger, it's not quite as difficult as it was starting that piece out. And don't be afraid to stop and readjust your rope so that it's staying flat and going around. And making sure that your needle is getting into both sides as it goes around. I did get a little bit away from where I wanted, and I won't have a nice seam there. really have to pay attention to that red line in the center of your foot, and that's staying in the center between your two pieces coming together, going around, or it won't be catching both sides of your fabric. And we need to make sure that it's going in both sides, so that we're, like it has over here, it's going in both sides. And you can start to see it's coming together. And this takes some practice. Like everything else, it takes a little bit of practice. Okay, now we're almost around to the first joining of the first two strips. So we're moving right along. We're watching the center of that foot to make sure that our two pieces are coming together real nice with that zigzag. And you're just twisting it as you go. And once you get away from that starting part in the center, it does get a lot easier putting this together. Make sure your needle's down before you let go of your piece and go to adjust something so that it doesn't go away from where you were stitching. And I just keep manipulating this and pressing it down as I go around. In this fabric that I was using, it was a little bit more slippery, so when I was putting my stuff together, I got a little bit more puckers in it. But as you're doing the zigzag going around, you don't even end up noticing those puckers as much. They start to, as it curls around, you don't see it as much because you got that zigzag going back and putting your pieces together. I'm just going to check and see. How big my center is supposed to be. Okay, so I need to get a ruler here, so I'll be able to check when I get to the point. It's starting to get bigger. We're going to keep going around until this is 8.5 inches in diameter. And at this point, it starts to go a little faster. And you just want to stay focused that you're zigzagging both sides, catching both sides. And I just stop every so often because this starts to twist and get a little crazy on me. I want to make sure that I'm keeping this open seam part, even though I have it stitched down the center. I have where the two pieces of fabric came together on this side. I want that to be going to the inside, and I want the smoother part going to the outside. And I just keep adjusting as I go. This is a little bit of a slow process. But the more of these that you do, the more often that you do them, it gets a little easier. I hadn't done one for a while. But you can start to see as you're, with this fabric where it was all different colors going down through. So a lot of this fabric was already had a lot of colors in it. Excuse me. It had your greens and teals and grays and tans and even some rust color and some bright blues and whatnot in it. I don't think I got that in the camera. Let me hold it up a little bit better. So there's quite a bit of colors as you went through this fabric. So I didn't really have to choose fabrics, as I can see that my colors, as I go around, it's going to have a lot of color in it, which I like quite a bit. Okay, so we'll get this going so we can get to the 8.5 inches around. And you're just going to continue to sew around that circle. Okay, so I'm almost to my 8.5 inches, not quite. And it does have a tendency to want to curl up a little bit on you. I just hold it flat. And I can sew a little bit faster now that it's getting a little bit bigger around. Where I'm just watching that center line on my foot to make sure it's staying between my two pieces. And then I'm catching both sides. And I'm adjusting as I'm going around. I think this is going to be really pretty with all those colors in the fabric. Check my size, see where I'm at here. Oh, I'm at my 8.5. So I'm going to take some chalk here. And I'm going to make a mark with chalk. So I know where I was. Because that's right about where, when I do end off, that I'm going to want to end off right about where my mark is. So I made a good size chalk mark. You could use the water soluble pen, whatever you would use for marking, and I just put a chalk mark there. Okay, so now to do our sides, this is what you want to keep in mind. If I hold my bowl up just like this, and I start to go around, my piece is going to flare out to the side, like this. It'll flare out to the side. It won't be perpendicular up and down. It'll be more out like this. If I hold it up kind of halfway, it's going to get another different, funnier shape. I'm going to need, as I'm doing my sides, to hold this side up as straight as I can up against my machine. And in fact, I'm going to move my camera real quick here so that you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Okay. I'm hoping that this is going to give you a little bit of a better view of what I'm going to be doing. And I haven't done this for a little while, so I'm hoping that I do well. You're always hoping when you're teaching a class that it's going to go well. So I'm holding this straight up against the end of my machine, nice and straight up. Of course, this part is leaning, but I have this side up, straight up against my machine. And I don't want to push it, you know, like in, but I do want it up straight. And so I'm going to kind of straighten it out as best as I can as I'm going around. And I got to stay focused as it's going. In fact, I'm going to turn this back down so I go a little slower again. Now when you're making bigger ones, sometimes it helps. They'll start to get a little floppy on you sometimes. And you can always stick like a pillow or some books in the back side over on here to help hold it up straight if it's getting too floppy. Since we're making the smaller one, the basic bowl, it won't be as bad as like if you were doing, say, the catnap bowl or a larger size bowl. Slow sewing thing. I'm going to put this back in my lap. And your rope will start to sometimes curl on you. I just stop and straighten it out a little bit and uncurl it to make sure that as I'm going around, I'm going to be staying straight with it. I'm just continuing to hold that up straight. I'm making sure that the pleat, you know, the open side is staying on the inside. And I'm focusing on keeping that center line lined up between the two fabrics so that my zigzag is catching both sides. And it's okay, like I said, to stop. It starts to curl and twist up on you every once in a while, and you just gotta stop and get it flattened out. start to get a little, for my sides to start going up here. At least I'm hoping that it's going to do that, and not just mess up on me. Okay. Sure that I caught both sides of that as I was going through. And I got it twisted again. Kind of like those old phone cords. The more that it goes around, the more it twists on me. I just got to run my hand down through the end and let it untwist itself. There we go. Let me see, being able to see. That I've got this up against the side of my machine, holding it there. Staying focused on where my seam is going, or my stitches, my zigzags going back and forth. Make sure that you catch both sides, and you'll have a hole in your side. And we don't want any holes in the side of our so our sides are starting to go up here. Anytime you stop, you always want to make sure that you have your needle down in your fabric before you start adjusting Well, we're getting there. Still got a bit of rope to go. And once we get the sides done, we'll put on our binding. I'm just continuing to hold my side on the end up straight as I go around. Twist this a little bit more, almost to the end. You can see that the top part is starting to go over the top of the machine. Again. Okay, I'm just gonna check. See if I can. Oh yeah, my chalk mark's over that way. So I kind of want to end this off right where my chalk mark was. Let's see, my chalk mark's right about here. Just gonna make myself a mark here on the top of this so I'll know where my chalk mark was, because I'm getting just about to the end of my piece. So we're gonna be ending this off. And so we're going to cut this. Oops, I almost dropped stuff on the floor. We're going to be cutting this so it's in, let me see, make sure I got my angle right. Oh no, I want my angle to be this way. Yeah. So I'm looking to where I had my mark. I brought my mark up so it would be at the end so I could see where I was ending off. And I'm just going to do an angle cut. So my point's coming out this way and it's flush up against there. And then I'm just going to finish, let me see. Okay, so you're just going to kind of push this up. There's going to be binding that goes around and will cover up for the most part, but when we get towards the end, we're just going to kind of butt that up against there. Actually, I'm going to use my awl, and I'm just going to butt that up against there a little bit. And now is the point where I'm just going to work my sides a little bit. I didn't do too bad standing up. Very nice. So you want to check your sides and make sure that you don't have any holes. If you have any places that you missed, you can see I had puckers in my fabric. It just adds a little bit of texture to the bowl, kind of adds to the look of it. So mainly we're checking just to see that we didn't have any gaps, any holes. If you have any gaps or holes, you just go ahead and fix those now. Just zigzag over them. Make sure you caught them well. Just shape my bowl a little bit. Not too bad. So we've got a nifty little bowl. It's looking pretty good. Not too bad. It's always interesting to see how these come out with color, especially when you've used one fabric that had multiple colors in it. And it's shaped up pretty good, I think. Okay, so you're going to take your last piece, your last strip, and I just cut my selvage off the end. Like that. And then you're going to take this and you're going to do the same thing. And you're gonna fold it in half, like so, and you're gonna take and you're gonna press it Okay. So now we have our binding strip that we have folded in half, and we've pressed it. So now you're going to take this, adjust the camera again here. Sorry for the waving. I'm not trying to make you dizzy. Bring it out just a little bit so you can see. We're going to go around and we're going to pin this binding to our sides. And you just want to keep it nice and flat as you go around. Put as many pins in as you need. You want your raw edge to be to the top of the bowl. And just keep pinning as you go around like so. I've left a little bit of a flap over on this side so that when we get around to the other side, I'll show you how we're going to connect the binding. So I just continue to go around. And pin that to my bowl. Actually, I'm going to stick that inside my bowl. Make it a little easier as I go around. And I'm putting several pins in so I make sure that I'm not puckering too much, since we're going in a circle and not straight like on you would on like a quilt or a pot holder or something for binding. To the end. I'm going to put one pin right about here, almost to where I ended off my piece. And I'm going to bring this over and I'm going to measure it to be about, let me see, actually, yeah. So I'm going to overlap it, and I want it to overlap a 1/2 inch over. So I'm going to measure that, and I want it to be a 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to double check that. I like to measure twice. Whenever I'm doing something, I like to measure twice. So once I make my cut, I don't have an oopsie. Okay, and I'm folding that in half. And I'm going to cut my strip. Right there. Get any little stragglers. Oh, there. Okay. Throw that in my scrap bucket. Now I'm going to unpin a little bit on the sides to make this a little bit easier. Actually, I gotta put my other foot back on. I was getting ready to do the 1/4 inch. I forgot I need to do my seam on this first. Okay, so I've got my bowl and I've got my two pieces. I want to make sure that I didn't twist them, because if you have it twisted, you're going to be disappointed when you go to put it back up there. So we want them to be nice and straight up against each other, just like when we sewed our pieces together, our strips together end to end. So I've got both right sides facing. Binding's always a little bit awkward when we're trying to do it. Even on a quilt, this is always the awkward part. Now normally on a quilt we would have sewn all the way around before we did this part, but on here we're going to do this part before we sew our binding down. And I just got to get those matched up side to side and be nice and flat for me, so that when I sew my 1/2 inch, I don't have any puckers in it. Find my 1/2. And like I said, you have to keep, it'd be good if I get that paper out of my way. Sometimes this takes a couple minutes to get everything adjusted, so it's going to want to lay down the right way for you. And actually, once I get this lined up, I am going to take and I'm going to clip each side of it to keep it lined up. So as I put it down to my machine, it doesn't keep coming apart on me. Okay. So then you're just going to lay that down there, and you're going to find your 1/2 inch on your guide down there. And I'm just going to sew across. Okay, now I can take those clips out. I'm not going to clip my threads real close to the edge, but somewhat, so that they're not sticking out on me. It always bugs me. You can always go around and clip any threads that you have afterward. But I'm going to get those ones out of my way. Okay. So now I'm going to take that and I'm going to finger press it with the seam outward. A lot of times when we're quilting, we go to one side, but that's going to create some bulk. So we're just going to do it flat, and then we're going to refold that in half. And I'll even put a little clip on there so that that stays in half for me as I'm going around. And I'm going to go back around here, and I'm going to repin this. In place. And if all went well, this will line up perfectly. And hopefully I didn't jinx myself saying that. Okay. Almost to the other side, and I think I got that a little bit tight. I'm going to readjust my pin over here. We'll see. Because we want it to just fit. And I'm not going to have this seam match up with the end. I have it a little bit to the side. And if I'm to lay this down flat, up against it, you can see it fits real well. And there is a little bit of a difference right here. You can see this is up a little bit higher than that side. There's no way going into a circle that that's not going to happen. So we're just going to, I'm going to fold this a little bit to the inside where I ended off with that little point. I'm going to let that go to the inside. And I'm just going to flatten that out and put a pin in there. Okay, I think that's fitting pretty well. Whoops, get rid of that clip. Switch my foot out. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch guide foot. You can just stay in straight stitch and use your 1/4 inch on there if you want. I like my 1/4 inch guide foot. I find it works fantastic for me to do. And my machine has a 1/4 inch setting, and this foot goes with my machine, so once I hit my 1/4 inch over there on my panel, it puts my needle right where I need it lined up with that red line. So then I'm going to lay this down like so. This is always a fun part too. So just like when we were holding it straight before, this is going to go up to the side. So you can see it's kind of going up. Oops, sorry, I don't mean to shake that on you. But this is kind of going to go over a little bit on the top, just like it did before. And I'm going to bring my needle down. I'm making sure that my fabric is up against that guide, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam going all the way around my bowl. I've got my fabric so that your cut edge is up at the top. I've got it lined up with the very top of my bowl, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. Now I'm going to take a couple 3/4 stitches forward, and I'm going to reverse 3/4 stitches because I want to secure that. And I'm just going to do a 1/4 inch seam all the way around the bowl, taking out my pins as I go. And we're almost done with our bowl, believe it or not. And I'm making sure that I straighten this out as I go so I don't get puckers in my binding. Or at least that's my goal. I'm just going to straighten that out a little bit. This fabric's a little more stretchy than if you were using a batik. But I had really liked this fabric. I was thinking that it would make a really cute Bali bowl because of all the different colors in the fabric. I'm adjusting that just a little bit so it lays flat. I'm trying not to stretch my fabric as I go. I just remembered I had this all turned down. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. And we're almost to the end. And I'm going to tuck in just a little bit that point. And it's going to help secure it a little bit. As I come around. And we're not going to have to worry about it because it's going to get covered up with our binding. And I'm just easing my binding so that I want to tuck that in just a little bit. And keeping my binding flat. Okay, and I'm going to reverse here and secure that end of my stitches again. And then go forward. And cut my thread. Okay, so we have our binding on. And I'm just going to go around and cut little straggler pieces of thread. Most of that's going to get covered up anyways when the binding comes around, but I like to cut any long pieces off and get rid of them. So the very last thing that you need to do is you're going to take your binding, oops, and see, it's good that I checked, because can you see when I came across here, I didn't connect with that part because of the difference in the bowl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back around. I'm going to take a couple of those stitches out actually. Because I want to make sure that my binding's going to connect, because where one side is a little bit higher than the other, my binding wasn't connecting down here. I'm going to take a couple more stitches out. I'm going to take a clip and I'm going to clip that down right there. And this point was, let me see, I think I need a couple of stitches out this way as well. That's enough, we'll see. So that little point, I just kind of want to roll it over. I don't want it poked all the way to the inside, but more or less kind of rolled over just a little bit. And I'm going to do a little clip right there, because I'm trying to make sure that these two pieces right here, because I was having a connection problem, where this comes down lower and this is up higher, when I went to sew across my 1/4 inch, it didn't connect with this part of my fabric. So I'm going to push that point down onto the top. Once I get this sewed down and we pull our binding over, that's going to get covered up. But in the meantime, I need to get my binding so it goes smoothly across. That's a little tricky. Okay, I'm going to fold it that way and see if this helps me when I go to sew it. And it's always good to check what you're doing, and I'm going to start back here a little ways. Get that back under there. And secure that stitch there. And let me see how I'm doing. And it's going to take just a little bit of manipulating to get this binding to go where I need it to go. I'm going to go just a little bit lower there. And bring it around, and I'm going to do my forward and back to secure that. And we'll double check it again and see if we got that connected properly. I think that came out better this time. Excuse me. So when we fold this side over, we're going to make sure that it covers up that little point. And it came out a lot better this time, a lot smoother this time, so it covered up that point. And we're going to roll this over all the way around and just clip any of these as you go. Oops. But you're going to fold this all out, and you're going to have to do it a little at a time as you go. And then you're going to hand stitch your binding down along the edge. So you just have to get yourself a sewing needle, and you'll sew your binding down along the edge all the way around, and you'll have a nice finish on your top going all the way around. And then your bowl will be all finished once you bent that over, and you just do your seam going all the way around. You'll have yourself a nice Bali bowl. Well, I thank you for joining me for this tutorial. This has been Seaside Quilting Tutorials. My name is Terry. Please take a moment and stop and like our video. We'd really love you to subscribe. And on the end, you'll see a little bell where you click on subscribe. You'll see a little bell there. Click on that and change it to all. And then as we have more tutorials come up, and we have quite a few that are coming up this coming month, we have several different bags and other projects that we're going to be doing tutorials on. I'll also be doing the other Bali Bowl tutorial with the fusible batting instead of the clothesline, so that you get both views of doing the Bali Bowl 2 different ways. Alrighty, I hope everybody has a good night. Happy sewing!